The halls of Storm's End echoed with the weight of ancient storms, but Gendry Baratheon stood in silence. The sea crashed against the cliffs outside, as if the gods themselves were restless. Gendry, now Lord of Storm's End, stared into the flames of the hearth, Daenerys' voice still haunting his thoughts. "I name you Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End." That moment was supposed to be his rise. But after her death and Bran's quiet ascension to the throne, Gendry had been cast back into the shadows. No seat on the council, no voice in court. Just a legitimized bastard left to rot in a crumbling castle while the real players moved their pieces. He wasn't bitter, not at first, but Storm's End had a way of hardening a man. The rain, the wind, the loneliness, it all worked its way into your bones. And Gendry had been alone for too long. Arya's departure was the final blow. She had refused his proposal. "I'm not a lady." She meant it. And Gendry, smitten and still so naive, had watched her ride into the unknown, thinking one day she'd return. She never did. Now, seated in the war hall that once belonged to Robert Baratheon, Gendry listened to the reports. Growing dissatisfaction, in the Reach, unease in the Vale, and silence from King's Landing. Brienne of Tarth visited him, urging patience. "You were given a great gift, a name, a home. Don't throw it away chasing ghosts." But Gendry wasn't chasing ghosts, he was chasing justice. "If I had the blood," he said coldly, "then I had the claim. And now I have the strength." Outside, blacksmiths hammered, day and night. Warships began appearing in the harbor. The Baratheon stag was stitched onto new banners, this time with a flame behind it, and across Westeros, old men whispered, "A Baratheon rises again." Storm's End became more than just a castle. It became a forge, a place where rage turned into resolve, and fire became fuel. Gendry trained relentlessly every morning before the sun rose, hammering steel by day and reading old records by candlelight at night. He devoured histories of Robert's rebellion, studying how his father toppled the Targaryens. Westeros had been ruled by blood and force, never by compromise. And Gendry, he had both now. Word spread. Disillusioned bannermen from the Stormlands and Reach began to arrive, knights who felt the realm had lost its way. Many saw Bran as a passive ruler, wise but distant. They wanted a king of flesh and fire, a king who bled like them. And Gendry, with his blacksmith's hands and Robert's fury, became that symbol. Lord Randil Tarly's cousin offered ships. A minor noble in the Vale pledged men. Even some former Lannister soldiers seeking a cause came to Storm's End under cover of night. But Gendry knew this wasn't enough. He would need allies in the shadows too. He sent a message to the Iron Bank. "My father owed you gold. I offer you fire. Back me and your debts will burn away with the old order." When the Iron Bank responded with silence, but didn't warn King's Landing, Gendry took it as permission. A raven arrived at Winterfell. Sansa, read it in the Great Hall. Her brow furrowed as she whispered to Brienne, "He's claiming Robert's legacy, and unlike Robert, he doesn't drink." The North would not kneel, but the South was already beginning to bow. The raven arrived at King's Landing. At dawn, Tyrion Lannister stood alone on the walls of the Red Keep, staring out at the horizon. The seas were quiet, but not for long. The letter was short. One sentence. "By blood and right of flame I claim the Iron Throne. Gendry Baratheon." Tyrion sighed and passed the scroll to King Bran. Bran, still and emotionless, simply nodded. "I saw this coming. I had hoped it would pass, but it didn't." Within days, Baratheon ships blocked Blackwater Bay. 1,000 antlered banners fluttered under the morning sun. The city stirred with unease. People remembered the last time fire came to King's Landing, and the ashes it left. Behind inside the small council chamber panic brewed. "He's a blacksmith's bastard," Sir Davos argued, though his voice was more pain than anger. "He's not this man. I knew him. He was humble, honest." But Varys' successor, a new master of whispers, shook her head. That Gendry died when Arya Stark sailed west. What's coming now? It is his father's son. Tyrion was left with a choice: fight and burn the city again or surrender. Bran wouldn't command war. He would not order death. Let them decide, Bran said softly. If the realm wants him, let them have him. I will not rule by fear. And so the city held its breath as the storm came. On the 5th day of siege, a roar split the skies. Not a dragon, but wildfire. Gendry's men had found the last of the Mad King's caches buried beneath the city walls. Explosions tore through the gates. Flames climbed the sky. No mercy, no retreat. Gendry led the charge himself. With hammer in hand, he fought through the streets like a man possessed, armor dented, blood on his brow. He reached the Iron Throne not by bloodline alone, but by blood spilled with his own hands. He stood before the throne, its steel cold and waiting. He looked up at it and sat. The city had fallen. Smoke still curled from rooftops. Wildfire scars blackened the walls. The bells had rung, but no surrender had been given. King's Landing, once scorched by dragons, now knelt to the stag reborn. Gendry Baratheon, blacksmith, bastard lord, now sat the Iron Throne. But even in triumph, his eyes searched the shadows. For her Arya, she came at dusk unseen by any, slipping through broken alleyways and scorched courtyards like a ghost. Word of Gendry's conquest had reached her across the sea. She didn't come for love. She came for truth. She entered the Red. Keep alone. Guards never saw her. He was alone in the throne room, resting a bruised hand on the sword across his lap, when she stepped from the dark. You look like him now, she said. Gendry stood slowly, heart hammering. Arya, you're sitting on a throne made of corpses, Gendry. So did every king before me. Is that who you are now, a king? The air between them trembled with unsaid words, grief, betrayal, longing. He stepped forward. I did this for us. For the future. She smiled bitterly. There is no us. There never was. I told you, I'm not a lady, and I don't follow kings. She turned to leave. Then kill me, he said suddenly. If you think I've become like the rest, do it now. She stopped, knife halfway drawn, and then slid it back into her sleeve. No, the realm will decide what kind of king you are. If you fall, it won't be by my hand. It'll be by theirs. She vanished as silently as she came, leaving him staring at the throne with something he hadn't felt in years, fear. Snow blanketed Winterfell's stone walls as Sansa Stark stood by the window, her fingers tight around the Raven's message. It was official now. Gendry Baratheon had seized King's Landing. Tyrion was missing. Bran had disappeared into the shadows of his visions. The Iron Throne belonged to the bastard king forged in fire, but the North remained silent, not out of fear. Out of resolve, Gendry sent envoys bearing gifts and carefully worded letters. The Storm and the Wolf once stood together, one raven read. Let us not fall to ruin when we could rise united. Sansa didn't reply. Instead, she gathered her bannermen in the great hall. The torches flickered as the lords of the North waited for her words. The South changes crowns like the weather, she said calmly. But we are not ruled by storms. We are the snow that endures. Cheers erupted. The Raven returned to King's Landing unopened. Gendry's court was quick to suggest war. His new advisers, ambitious nobles, and knight commanders who'd tasted victory and wanted more. But Gendry hesitated. He still remembered Arya's cold words. If you fall, it won't be by my hand. It'll be by theirs. Instead of marching north, he tried ruling, but it was not easy. The Reach rebelled again. The Iron Islands stopped paying tribute. Dorne made no declaration, but closed its borders. Whispers of a broken realm buzzed louder, each day. Then came the assassination attempt. One of his own knights tried to poison his wine during a feast. The man was caught, his last words damning. You were a smith. That's all you ever were. You are not our king. Gendry ordered the knight's head removed, publicly. But that night in his chambers he stared at his reflection for hours. He had followed queens into fire. He had built weapons for kings, and now he sat where dragons once ruled, but felt more like steel cooling too fast, strong on the outside, cracking within. The Iron Throne had never felt heavier. Gendry, once proud and full of purpose, now walked the halls of the Red Keep like a ghost. The crown on his brow no longer symbolized victory. It was a burden wrapped in steel and blood. Every morning new reports arrived, rebellions in the Riverlands, riots in Flea Bottom, a growing rumor that Daenerys still lived. Merchants whispered that Jon Snow had crossed back over the wall. Every shadow held another threat. But what truly haunted Gendry was the silence from Arya and the quiet power of Sansa Stark. His spies in the north brought back stories. Sansa ruled with sharp grace. The people loved her. The bannermen called her the Queen of the North. Where Gendry's crown was forged in fire, hers was shaped by patience. And then came the message from Davos Seaworth. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a challenge. It was a plea. Step down, lad, before this breaks you completely. I knew your father. I watched him drink himself into nothing. You're better than this crown. You always were. Gendry didn't reply, but something shifted in him. That night he walked alone through the remnants of the throne room, the spot where Daenerys died, where Jon vanished, where power had always devoured its wielder. He stared at the Iron Throne and saw not victory, but a cage. The next morning he ordered the throne room sealed. No one sits upon it, he declared. Not me, not anyone. His advisers begged him to reconsider, but Gendry dismissed half the council, shut down the war, campaigns and summoned envoys from across Westeros. I took the crown, he said, but now I will do what no king before me has dared. He was preparing something new, something no one expected. But smoke still rose over Westeros, and many doubted a blacksmith could smother centuries of war with diplomacy. Not when fire was in his blood. The Red Keep had gone quiet. No feasts, no pageantry, no crown on Gendry's head. He spent most of his days in the old armory, alone, beating steel like he once did, before he ever knew what noble blood meant. The sound of hammer striking iron echoed through the ruined halls like a dying heartbeat. His hands were blistered, his face shadowed. But he was at peace there. The realm, however, was not. Many couldn't understand the king's silence. Whispers of madness began to circle him, another Baratheon losing his mind. Lords grew anxious. The Reach began organizing again. Dorne refused to speak to any envoy from the Crownlands, but Gendry wasn't mad. He was remembering. He remembered Flea Bottom, where people fought for bread. He remembered Robert Baratheon, drunk and hollow. He remembered Arya's fierce eyes when she told him, "Power isn't always a crown." So he made a plan, a final one. At the next great gathering in the Great Hall, he stood before a crowd of nobles, knights, and lords of the realm. No crown on his head, no armor, just a plain leather tunic and soot-stained hands. "I claimed the throne by force, and for that I apologize," he began. "Not because I was wrong, but because I did it alone. I forged my kingship like a blade, hard and fast, and blades, if not tempered with care, crack." He looked each lord in the eye. "I have summoned you not to ask for loyalty. I summon you to build something better." He stepped aside, revealing a circle of seats, 12 in total, marked for each major region of Westeros. "Let the next king or queen be chosen. Not by war, not by dragons, but by the realm itself. Let Westeros be ruled by voices, not violence." Gasps filled the hall. Some scoffed, some wept, but most listened. He was no longer the boy chasing Arya's love, nor the blacksmith hoping to fit in at court. He had become something else, something the realm hadn't seen in centuries, a ruler who gave up power by choice. That night, Arya appeared again, watching from the shadows, and for the first time since she left, she smiled. The bells rang again, in King's Landing, but this time not for surrender, not for war. They rang for a meeting that had never before taken place in Westeros, a true council of equals, 12 seats, 12 voices. From the north came Sansa Stark, regal in white wolf fur. From the Vale, Lord Jon Royce. From Dorne, a fierce new princess cloaked in red and gold. The Reach sent Lady Ellen Tyrrell's niece, bold and sharp-tongued. Others arrived, some cautious, some curious, all drawn by the impossible, a king who wanted no throne. Gendry stood before them, now more man than myth. The Iron Throne behind him was shrouded in cloth, its jagged edges hidden like a relic of another time. "Choose," he said simply. "Not for me, not for power, but for peace." After hours of debate, some heated, some hesitant, a name was put forward. Lady Samira Valarian, daughter of a forgotten branch of the ancient house beloved in Driftmark, and known for rebuilding the shattered ports. She had no dragons, no armies. Just a legacy of healing and trade. The vote was cast. For the first time in centuries, Westeros had a ruler not born to rule, but chosen to lead. As the banners were changed and the old throne dismantled, Gendry watched from afar, seated on a crate in his smithy, wiping soot from his arms. Arya joined him there, silent for a moment before speaking. "You really gave it up." He nodded. "It wasn't mine to keep." She looked at him carefully, then offered a rare, quiet smile. "Come with me." "Where?" "West." He stared at her, the wildness in her eyes unchanged, the pull of the unknown calling her. "I'm not done here," he said softly. "Storms. Hen still needs its lord." She rose. "Then I'll come back someday, see what you've built." He didn't ask when, he didn't need to. They parted not as lovers, not even as promises, but as two people who had changed the world in their own way. Years later, in songs and whispers, they'd speak of him not as King Gendry, but as the king that never was. Storm's End hadn't felt like home in years, not since before the crown, before the war, before blood turned his hammer into a symbol of conquest. Gendry stood on the battlements, watching the sea churn below. It was dusk, the sky soaked in fire-orange clouds as gulls circled above. The banners no longer bore the flaming stag. They were plain now, gold on black like the old sigil, but without war at its center. Inside, the castle buzzed with quiet. Work, repairs, rebuilding. He'd spent the last year personally overseeing each stone, each broken gate. He didn't want to be remembered as a king. He wanted to be known as a builder. But not everything could be fixed. He still thought of Arya. Every time the wind carried salt into the halls, every time the thunder cracked in the distance, his mind went to her, wild and free, riding west across the unknown. She had offered him something back then, a second life. But he stayed. And now, though the wars were over, peace brought its own kind of ache. Because peace didn't fill the silence in a man's chest. That silence grew louder when a raven came from the north. The letter was sealed with white wax. From Sansa, he broke it with a careful thumb. "Jon Snow has returned to Winterfell. Hay carries something, and it has begun to whisper. Come, Gendry. I fear the ghosts of old kings are not yet done with us." The snow crunched beneath Gendry's boots as he rode through the gates of Winterfell. It had been nearly 4 years since he last crossed this threshold, back when the North had closed its gates to his rule and refused to bend. But now there were no banners raised in defiance, only silence and cold wind that whistled through the stone towers like an old song too tired to carry on. He dismounted slowly, his breath visible in the freezing air, and handed the reins to a stable boy who looked at him with wide, uncertain eyes. "Is it true?" the boy asked. "You used to be king?" Gendry gave a faint, tired smile. "Only for a moment. Then I came to my senses." Inside the castle, the halls smelled of firewood and furs. The warmth was welcome, but it did nothing to ease the unease in his chest, because Sansa had not summoned him lightly. And Jon Snow? Jon had been dead once. Sansa met him in the great hall. Her hair was longer now, her face thinner, eyes harder, but still as sharp as ever. She didn't offer him a smile, she only offered the truth. He came back from beyond the wall, alone. Not even Ghost followed him. He carries something wrapped in chains. "What is it?" Gendry asked. "A crown," she said, "one none of us have ever seen." But the moment he stepped through the gates, the ravens stopped singing. The fire in the godswood died out. And Jon hasn't spoken a full sentence since. They walked together to the crypts. Jon was there, beneath the statues of the dead Starks, sitting on the cold stone floor, the object in his lap wrapped in black cloth and bound with iron links. His eyes were hollow, his hair grayer than it should have been. He didn't look up when Gendry entered, he just spoke softly. It whispered to me, "Out there, in the ice, in the dark." "What is it, Jon?" Gendry stepped closer. "A crown, forged from the Night King's bones, his armor, his blade. Someone made it." Jon's voice cracked. "And now, it wants a king." Sansa flinched behind them. Gendry stared at the cloth. The iron links looked old, but something beneath them pulsed, ever, so slightly like a slow heartbeat. He felt heat in his chest, but not warmth, pressure, like a forge without a vent. "We have to destroy it," Sansa said. "It won't let us," Jon muttered. "Fire didn't work. I tried dragon glass, Valyrian steel. It just laughed." That word sent a chill down. Gendry's spine laughed, as if the cold had grown a soul. He turned to Sansa. "Who else knows?" "No one," she said, "and I'd like to keep it that way." Jon stood finally. His hands trembled. "I brought it here because it called your name, Gendry. Yours, not mine, not Bran, you." The silence fell heavy. Gendry looked at the thing again, at the wrapped shadow that pulsed beneath the chains, and for the first time, since he'd given up the Iron Throne, he felt it again, the pull not of power but of destiny. "Then it ends with me," he said. "Or begins again," Jon whispered. For 3 days and 3 nights, Gendry stayed in the crypts of Winterfell. He did not sleep. He did not eat. He only stared at the thing wrapped in chains, feeling its presence like a second heartbeat beneath the stone. When he moved too close, his skin prickled. When he backed away, his head throbbed. It wasn't speaking to him in words. No, it was deeper than that. A rhythm. A pulse. A call. Above, Winterfell went on as usual. Fires burned, guards patrolled, ravens circled. But below, in that cold cavern beneath the statues of dead kings, Gendry wrestled with something older than time. Something not meant to exist. Sansa visited him on the 4th morning. She descended the steps with hesitation, the torch in her hand casting long, shivering shadows across the tomb walls. "You need rest," she said quietly. Gendry shook his head. "It's dreaming, and I see what it sees. You sound mad." So did Bran, before he became the three-eyed raven. He looked at her, eyes bloodshot but sharp. "It's not just a crown. It's memory. Cold, ancient memory. Of the first men, of the long night, of fire-breaking snow and snow-devouring fire. Someone forged it from what remained of the Night King's armor, but it carries more than bone. It remembers." Sansa hesitated, stepping closer. "Then we destroy it. It won't die by fire," Gendry said, "and if we bury it, it will call someone else." He looked down at his hands, burned, scarred, powerful. "It chose me." Sansa flinched. "Do you want it?" Gendry's voice dropped to a whisper. "No, but I understand it." He stood slowly and approached the crown, still wrapped, still pulsing beneath the black cloth and iron chains. One by one he began unwrapping it. Sansa moved to stop him. "Gendry! If I don't touch it, someone else will." The last of the cloth fell away. The crown was unlike anything Westeros had ever seen. Forged from jagged obsidian and icy crystal, with shards of dark metal curling like frozen thorns. The inside shimmered faintly with trapped mist, like it had swallowed the breath of winter itself, and when Gendry reached out and finally touched it, the world disappeared. He was standing on a field of black snow. The sky above him was grey, the sun just a distant smudge behind frozen clouds. Across from him stood a figure, tall, cloaked in blue frost, its eyes burning like coals in a glacier. It didn't speak, but Gendry understood. "You failed," Gendry said. The creature tilted its head. "You were defeated, burned, scattered. Mother." Being took a slow step forward. "And now you want to return, through me." The voice came not from the figure, but from the air around him. "You were born in fire. I was born in cold. Together we balance the realm. Fire conquers, cold endures." Gendry's hand burned. He looked down. The crown was in his palm, but it was melting through his skin, fusing to him. "I won't be your vessel," the voice whispered. "You already are." He awoke on the floor of the crypts, gasping, shivering. Jon Snow was there now, kneeling beside him, Sansa behind him with a blade drawn. "You touched it," Jon said. Gendry looked down. His palm was marked now. A ring of black ice burned into his flesh. "It knows me," Gendry whispered. Sansa's face tightened. "Then we're running out of time." Snow fell thick over Winterfell. Each flake landed like a warning, like the sky itself knew what rested beneath the keep. The crown, ancient, cursed, alive, was no longer just an object. It had fused to Gendry in spirit, if not yet in flesh. The mark on his palm would not fade. Every night he dreamed of white shadows, marching. Every day he felt colder inside. But it wasn't death. It was something worse. Purpose. The fire in him was dimming. In the godswood beneath the red leaves of the weirwood tree, Gendry knelt for the first time in years. He was not a praying man, but he was no longer sure what man he was at all. Sansa watched from behind the tree. "We can call a meeting. Send word to the council. Tell them what's happened." "They'll panic," Gendry said quietly. "They'll argue. And while they argue, this memory of the dead, it will grow." "Then what do we do?" she asked. He turned. "I leave." "Where?" "Beyond the wall." Jon, standing nearby with Ghost at his side, finally spoke. "You're not strong enough. That thing marked you. If you go north alone, I won't be alone." They turned. Arya stood at the edge of the grove. Her cloak was worn, her face older, but her eyes burned the same, wild and clear. "I sailed to the edge of the world," she said. "There's nothing but ocean and ghosts. But here is where the darkness still lives." She looked at Gendry. "And I'm not letting you face it without me." The next morning, they left Winterfell under cover of silence. Only Sansa, Jon, and a few loyal guards knew. No banners, no ceremony. Just a blacksmith turned king and the girl who never wanted to be a lady, riding into the cold. Past the wall, past Craster's keep, past even the ruined watchtowers long swallowed by snow. And there, beneath the northern lights, Gendry found the altar, a place where the first long night began. The crown pulsed inside his satchel. Its whispers grew louder. It wanted him to wear it, to take the power, to raise a new age of balance, of cold and fire together. Arya stood beside him as he pulled it out one last time. "You don't have to do this," she said. "Yes," he said. "I do, but not like it wants." He stepped into the altar's circle, drew a dagger of dragonglass from his belt, and with a final breath, threw the crown into the fire. The ground shook. Ice cracked beneath their feet. The mist screamed. Then silence, and then sunlight. Real golden sunlight broke through the clouds for the first time in weeks. Gendry collapsed. Arya caught him. His hand was blackened, burned beyond healing, but the mark was gone. Years later, Storm's End thrived again. A forge rang day and night, and its master, hand-scarred, eyes older, trained a new generation in shaping steel, not wielding it for war. Arya visited often, never staying long, never explaining where she went in between, but she always returned. No thrones, no crowns, just fire, love, and memory. And across Westeros, no one spoke of the cold crown again, because sometimes the greatest kings are the ones who walk away.